the biggest defence boost in 10 years. The Prime Minister has vowed to increase defence spending to 2.5% of the national budget. That's an extra £75 billion.
Well, speaking in Poland yesterday, the Prime Minister stressed that the UK is not on the brink of war, but did claim the extra money would put the country's defence industry on a war footing.
Well, as Churchill said in 1934, to urge the preparation of defence is not to insert the imminence of war. On the contrary, if war was imminent, preparations for defence would be too late. I believe we must do more to defend our country, our interests and our values. So today I'm announcing the biggest strengthening of our national defence for a generation. We will increase defence spending to a new baseline of 2.5% of GDP by 2030.
I'm amazed how they make it look as if they are doing something as opposed to they've let defence spending fall well behind. Let's get the views on Deputy Editor at Spike, Fraser Myers. Defence budget, it's in a real mess. You talk to anyone in the armed forces, they can't maintain even accommodation for people in the armed forces. We're in the red as regards our bills for various munitions and things at the moment. I mean, you know, This isn't, he's not doing anything. He's doing what he has to do and should have done a long time ago.
I think a lot of people will be saying 2.5% by 2030. Well, you're not going to be Prime Minister, mate, by 2030.
Correct. That's a Labour problem then.
I think Labour will probably commit to it. They certainly want to go to this 2.5% figure, is what they've said previously, that they want to scrutinise the numbers if they see if they can get there by 2030.
Sorry to interrupt, but Ben Wallace was hilarious, I thought, yesterday in his response to that. He said, "Oh, really? We need another defence review, do we?" He said, "Why not we create a union for defence? That'll scare our enemies."
I mean, and everyone sort of agrees that defence is becoming much more of a national priority. The world is becoming more unstable. I don't want to exaggerate that. I'm not saying we're on the brink of World War III or anything like that. But certainly you can see tensions, war breaking out in the Middle East. We still have the war in Ukraine waging on, tensions increasing in the Far East too, between China and various other East Asian countries. So, we are living in a more dangerous world, and defence should be at the forefront of people's minds.
But what has suddenly triggered this change? Because it was just weeks ago in the budget when Jeremy Hunt and the Chancellor were insisting that they'd get to 2.5% of GDP when the economic conditions allowed. Well, nothing's changed economically in that time.
No, that's right. I mean, I think it's because it's something that has, dogged Rishi Sunak, that he's been seen as weak on defence. His other rivals for the Tory leadership all pledged to reach this 2.5% target around this kind of time. He's saying that he can reach it without affecting frontline services, without putting up taxes. That remains to be seen. He says he will do it by reducing the civil service to pre-Brexit levels. Now, governments always promise they can make efficiency savings without affecting your public services, but often
70,000 civil servant jobs is a huge number, and if there were that many to cut, surely they would have done that before.
They could have done that now, you'd think.
And Ben Wallace seems to have hinted in an interview elsewhere that these cuts could actually come from a manifesto pledge where they were going to cut taxes. They say that the money could come from not making the tax cuts
going into the next election. I mean, this is the thing. I mean, in any ways, as I said earlier, this is not going to be Rishi Sunak's decision realistically. How to manage this. I think one of the problems, as you alluded to, Eamon, is that the military is degraded. We have, I think, 76,000 soldiers. That's a third less than just 2 decades ago. The world was a lot safer place 2 decades ago, you could say. The Navy is so short-staffed, they recently had to mothball 2 ships. There's a broader recruitment crisis in the armed forces.
Yeah.
Whether a 0.2 percentage point increase in the budget over the next 6 years is going to make up for those issues, I think, it seems unlikely to me.
This comes at the same time as all this extra money is being released by the USA for Ukraine, for Taiwan, whatever. And I know you said we're not on the brink of World War III. You could have fooled me.
Well, I think one of the reasons why it feels there's a sort of sense of urgency in Britain and also in Europe, actually, Rishi Sunak is doing a European tour. He's talking to Polish Prime Minister and to the German Chancellor, is because of the fear of Trump presidency, possibly more isolationist US. Now, we've had the Ukraine package passed in the Senate, 60 billion going towards Ukraine and to other conflicts. But that took so much wrangling, and that was even under a Democratic president who is fully supportive of of Ukraine's fight. I think Trump is actually not as isolationist as many commentators make out, but he is certainly unpredictable, and he has, quite famously said that, NATO countries that don't pay their way, Vladimir Putin, come and have a go. Now, he obviously doesn't really mean that. But I think, the West, the non-US, UK, Europe, the other NATO countries are starting to worry that, the US is not necessarily going to be a reliable partner, and so we have to, get our own house in order.
Well, thank you very much, Fraser Myers, Deputy Editor at Spiked, for us this morning.